that one of Muhammad Ali's toughest opponents wasn't a household name, but a shy, awkward boxer who vanished from the spotlight. In 1976, Jimmy Young did the unthinkable. He outboxed the greatest, and I predict a victory on April the 30th next month. He says there's so much color, folks, in Washington. I want the brothers to have a chance to see me before I retire. Audience cheering. But instead of glory, he faded into the shadows. What happened to the man who shocked the world? And why don't we remember his name? Let's not pretend you don't ignore this guy when you think of boxing legends like Foreman, Norton, and Lyle. He was embarrassing some of the greatest fighters of one of the greatest eras of boxing. He was a genius who ended up broke addicted and forgotten, dying young while the man he actually defeated became an international icon. Hear me out. His calculating boxing brain didn't emerge overnight. It was forged in the unforgiving streets of Philadelphia, where a 14-year-old Jimmy Young made a decision that would alter his life forever. Born on November 14, 1948, in one of Philadelphia's toughest neighborhoods, Young faced the harsh realities of inner-city life from an early age. Like many kids from his block, he learned quickly that nothing came easy. As a teenager, Young worked nights at a local laundromat, saving every penny. After weeks of late shifts, he finally purchased a radio, a genuine luxury for a kid from his background. When that prized possession was stolen, the very next day, rage consumed the normally shy Young. Armed with a butcher knife and fire hydrant wrench, he set out for revenge through the concrete jungle of his neighborhood. His father, spotting the dangerous implements and recognizing the fury in his son's eyes, redirected Young's path by taking him to the police athletic league gym. Inside those walls, amid the rhythmic sounds of speed bags and the smell of sweat-soaked canvas, Young found purpose. The boxing gym transformed his raw anger into discipline, channeling street fury into measured technique. On October 28, 1969, Jimmy Young stepped into the professional ring for the first time, defeating John Rainey by unanimous decision. Like many Philadelphia fighters of that era, Young initially fought aggressive and offense-minded, always hunting for the knockout, a style that seemed natural for a fighter from the city that produced Joe Frazier and later terrible Tim Witherspoon. And came the 11th fight of his career, a sobering wake-up call against Ernie Shavers. In 1971, Shavers had already established himself as one of boxing's most devastating punchers, with a formidable 42-2 record. Young found himself terribly unprepared for Shavers' raw power, and was knocked unconscious in just 3 rounds. Imagine the soul-searching that follows such a defeat. Lying in bed, replaying those 3 painful rounds in his mind, Young confronted an uncomfortable truth. Everything he thought he knew about boxing was wrong. His aggressive style had left him vulnerable, opening defensive gaps that Shavers ruthlessly exploited. This crushing defeat became the catalyst for one of the boxing's most remarkable transformations. Rather than abandoning the sport, Young returned to the fundamentals. He studied films of defensive masters, Sugar Ray Robinson's footwork, Archie Moore's cross-arm defense, Jersey, Joe Walcott's subtle head movements. For the next 3 years after the Shavers loss, Young went undefeated. The headhunter was gone, replaced by a defensive specialist who made opponents miss and made them pay. His rematch with Shavers ended in a controversial draw. Though many ringside observers believed Young had clearly won, this is where the pattern of questionable decisions against him started. Through this period of reinvention, Young developed something truly unique, a boxing style that prioritized survival and precision over power. The Philadelphia streets had taught him resilience. The boxing gym had taught him technique, but that devastating loss to shavers had taught him something even more valuable: self-awareness. Have you ever seen Muhammad Ali completely frustrated in the ring, not just challenged, but utterly bewildered, if you thought the greatest heavyweight champion of all time was untouchable? The night of April 30th, 1976, at the Capitol Center in Maryland might change your mind. This was supposed to be a routine title defense for Ali. Another stepping stone on his legendary journey, but Jimmy had other plans. The Philadelphia counterpuncher arrived that night with a blueprint to dismantle the greatest, and for 15 rounds he executed it nearly flawlessly. The physical differences between the two men were striking. Ali stepped into the ring carrying 230 pounds, the heaviest he'd been to that point in his career. Too much cake, maybe. Meanwhile, Young weighed a slim 209 pounds and had the advantage of youth, being 7 years younger than Ali. This was crucial to the fight's dynamics. What unfolded was boxing's equivalent of watching a master chess player dismantle a champion. Young constantly moved. When Ali lunged forward with his trademark combinations, Young was already gone, pivoting away and countering with precision. By the middle rounds, Ali's famous hand speed disappeared. His extra pounds slowed him down, turning his usual gracefulness sluggish. The nimble Young took advantage of this weakness, making his opponent miss more punches than any other fighter had managed in his career. The greatest's trademark reflexes were nowhere to be found. As the rounds progressed, the crowd grew restless. They had come to see Ali dazzle, not struggle against an unknown challenger. But instead of witnessing Ali's brilliance, they watched Young put on a defense, slipping punches and making the champion look ordinary. What makes this fight even more remarkable is how Young completely turned the tables on Ali's usual approach. Throughout his career, Ali had been the defensive specialist who made opponents miss, but against Young, he found himself forced to be the aggressor, a role he rarely played, and it shows. When the final bell rang, many ringside observers believed Young had done the unthinkable, outboxing boxing's greatest boxer. Say that 10 times fast. Anyways, Ken Norton even scored the contest from his ringside seat. The respected former Ring magazine editor Lester Bromberg called the official decision a travesty in his post-fight comments. Yet, when the scorecards were read, all 3 judges had somehow given the fight to Ali in a unanimous decision. The crowd's reaction told the story, a mixture of boos and shocked silence. The numbers paint a strong picture. Young landed 222 punches to Ali's mere 113. This stark contrast tells you why many consider this one of boxing's most controversial decisions. Do you? This fight reveals an uncomfortable truth about boxing. Sometimes the official record doesn't align with what our eyes clearly see. Ali versus Young stands as one of the most glaring examples of boxing's nature and the weight that a champion's name can carry on the scorecards. How did he do it? Let's see. Remember those boxing rules you thought were set in stone? Jimmy didn't just bend them, he slipped right through them, literally. When Ali cornered him against the ropes, he employed a defensive tactic so unusual, it left boxing sticklers outraged, while others called it tactical genius. Picture this scene: Ali applying his trademark pressure, backing Young into the ropes for what should have been a punishing combo But instead of covering up or trying to slip away, Young simply disappeared. He ducked his head and sometimes his entire upper body between the ropes, forcing the referee to halt the action and reset both fighters at center ring. He used this escape maneuver 6 times throughout their championship bout. In the 12th round, the controversy reached its peak when the referee made a crucial decision after Young ducked through the ropes again, ruling it an official knockdown and beginning the count. You can imagine Ali's frustration. Here was a fighter who had faced the most fearsome punchers in heavyweight history, Frazier, Foreman, Liston. Yet he couldn't land clean shots on Young because his opponent kept literally exiting the battlefield. Every time Ali had him in position for punishment, the smaller fighter would force a reset by slipping through the boxing equivalent of an emergency exit. He later admitted he did it to frustrate Ali, which is kind of funny. It meant this wasn't a panic move. It meant this was calculated psychological warfare against boxing's greatest mental boxer. Young understood that disrupting Ali's rhythm was just as important as avoiding his punches. The boxing world split into 2 over this unusual defense. Some viewed it as a brilliant strategy, a strategy that neutralized Ali's aggression while conserving energy. Others saw it as poor sportsmanship that violated boxing's spirit, where fighters are expected to stand their ground rather than finding loopholes to avoid combat. But get this. The official rulebook provided little guidance. Regulations said that a fighter going outside the ropes might trigger a count if they were unable to continue. But there was nothing about purposely using this as a tactical advantage. Young found a gray area and exploited it masterfully. This controversial technique likely cost Young crucial points with the judges. Boxing scoring traditionally rewards aggression and ring generalship, controlling the action and dictating terms. By literally leaving the ring, Young created the impression he was running, rather than controlling the fight on his terms. Where most fighters competed primarily with their fists, Young competed with his mind. He recognized Ali's psychological advantage over opponents and developed a counter-strategy that would frustrate the greatest at his own mental game. His self-awareness birthed a fighting style so peculiar that opponents left the ring utterly confused. Imagine discovering your greatest weapon isn't your fists, but the gray matter you call your brain. That's exactly what happened with Jimmy Young, a revelation that transformed him from just another Philly fighter into a puzzle no heavyweight could solve. He floated around the ring with an almost hypnotic rhythm, like a chess master, moving pieces to positions his opponent couldn't anticipate. He made you miss, made you frustrated, made you beat yourself. Against Ron Lyle in 1975, Young demonstrated his masterful approach. Lyle, a feared heavyweight with devastating knockout power, who had gone toe-to-toe with the most dangerous men in boxing, suddenly looked ordinary against Young's brilliance. Despite this remarkable skill, our boy Jimmy struggled financially like a magician performing incredible tricks to an empty theater. Between championship-caliber fights, he returned to working on the Philadelphia docks loading cargo just to feed his family. The boxing world loved knockout artists and brawlers, not defensive specialists like him. Top heavyweights avoided him. His awkward, frustrating style made him high-risk, low-reward. You might lose to him, look terrible doing it, and generate minimal ticket sales. Young embodied boxing's ultimate contradiction. too good for his own good. By the time Young secured his title shot against Muhammad Ali, he was established as one of the world's best heavyweights. But he was still so financially strapped, he couldn't afford a car. Here was a man preparing to face the most famous athlete on the planet, with no way to get there, which exposes boxing's unwritten rules. The sport claims to reward technical brilliance, but the business rewards excitement and marketability. Young chose effectiveness over entertainment, and the system made him pay for it. Think about those monster punchers of the 70s. Heavyweight division Foreman, Shavers, Lyle men who could end fights with a single blow. Most fighters approach these human wrecking balls with fear. But Jimmy Young, he approached them with a chess player's mindset. I don't really fight to win. Young once explained in what might be the most revealing quote of his career, I fight to survive. After his heartbreaking loss to Ali, Young doubled down on the very style that had nearly dethroned the champion. Against Ron Lyle a second time, he dominated so completely that one judge awarded him 11 of the 12 rounds. The same Ron Lyle who had engaged Foreman in that epic slugfest couldn't even touch Young. Then came 1977, when he crafted his masterpiece against George Foreman. Remember, Foreman had bulldozed through 5 straight knockout victims, rebuilding his fearsome reputation after the Ali loss. The boxing world saw him as unstoppable again, the same terrifying force who had once flattened Joe Frazier. As the crowd gathered in Puerto Rico, everyone expected another Foreman demolition job. What unfolded instead stunned everyone. With each passing round, frustration etched deeper lines in Foreman's face. The mighty puncher, accustomed to seeing opponents crumble, found himself swinging at shadows. The arena, initially buzzing with anticipation for Foreman's power, was silent. The dramatic climax arrived in the final round, when Young shocked everyone by dropping the supposedly unstoppable Foreman. When the judge's unanimous decision was announced, it wasn't just a victory. It devastated Foreman so much that he retired. Big George Foreman completely abandoned boxing for an entire decade. You'd think sending one of history's most feared punchers into exile would cement Young's place in boxing history. Yet his own words proved hauntingly accurate. I didn't think anything would change for me, just because I beat Foreman, and it didn't. Between Foreman and Shavers, arguably, the 2 hardest punchers heavyweight history has ever seen. Young's puzzling style made them look ordinary. His ability to diffuse power wasn't just good, it was historically exceptional. After dismantling 2 of boxing's most feared knockout artists, Jimmy Young stood at the precipice of heavyweight glory. Just one more win would secure a title shot against Muhammad Ali. But boxing isn't just about what happens inside the ropes. Sometimes it's about who's watching from ringside. On November 5, 1977, at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Young stepped into the ring against Ken Norton in a WBC heavyweight title eliminator. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Muhammad Ali himself had come to watch openly, cheering for Norton throughout the fight, making it painfully clear who he wanted to face next, having already experienced Young's frustrating style firsthand. As the tactical bout unfolded over 15 grueling rounds, while Norton pressed forward with an aggressive body attack, Young consistently landed cleaner, more precise punches. He slipped, he countered. He made Norton miss and made him pay. The pattern repeated round after round. When the final bell rang, the body language told the story. Young raised his hands in confident victory, his face beaming, Norton hung his head and trudged back to his corner. In boxing's unspoken language, Norton's demeanor admitted defeat as clearly as any referee's decision. Then came the moment that changed Young's trajectory forever. The ring announcer called for attention, and the scorecards were read. A split decision for Norton. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and boos. Young stood frozen in disbelief. The arena fell silent around him as the announcement sank in like a mirror, shattering into 1,000 pieces each, reflecting the same bitter truth. The system had failed him. What's even worse is that Norton approached Young and said, "I thought you had it." Even the victor believed he had lost. In that moment, something fundamentally broke within Jimmy Young, not his body, but his spirit. For a fighter who had climbed from the Philadelphia streets to the brink of a championship, who had outfoxed the most fearsome punchers of his era, who had even outboxed the greatest himself, only to be denied by the judges. This second controversial decision didn't just cost him a title shot. It shattered his faith in boxing itself. The Norton decision wounded Young's soul. The fighter, who had always believed that skill and intelligence would triumph over politics, now faced a cruel reality. In boxing, the most important punch isn't always the one that lands cleanest. Sometimes it's the one that impresses the right people. The aftermath was grim. Young's motivation waned. His training became half-hearted. That November night in Las Vegas marked the beginning of the end for Jimmy Young. He continued fighting for years, but the magic was gone. But the cruelest part of this story is just beginning. The defensive genius who'd schooled boxing's most feared punchers transformed into something far worse than a losing fighter. He became a nobody. Young's downfall came fast. The man who stood one victory away from a world championship suddenly lost twice to unranked Osio Casio in 1978 and 1979. His precise footwork, perfect timing, and brilliant defensive skills, the very weapons that had frustrated Ali Foreman, and Lyle vanished like a candle snuffed out in the dark. By 1980, boxing had a new label for young trial horse. The once elite contender became merely a measuring stick for prospects. This transformation played out vividly against Jerry Cooney in 1980. Young initially showcased flashes of his former brilliance, but when a cut opened above his eye, officials stopped the fight. The defensive wizard who once made Foreman miss wildly stood bleeding and defeated another stepping stone on someone else's path to glory. Losses to Michael Dokes, Tony Tubbs, and Tony Tucker pushed Young deeper into boxing's shadows, far from the spotlight of his masterclass days. The tragedy deepened because, even in his prime, Young never received the financial rewards his talent deserved. Despite earning nearly $2 million throughout his career, significant for a 1970s heavyweight without a title, he later claimed he received far less than his fair share. When the boxing gloves finally came off for good in 1988, Jimmy Young faced an opponent far more relentless than Ali Foreman or Norton Life after the ring. The same brilliant mind that once outboxed Muhammad Ali would soon wage a different fight, one against enemies that hit harder than any heavyweight champion: poverty addiction, and the devastating physical toll of thousands of punches absorbed over 2 decades. The final bell rang, not signaling victory, but a harsh return to reality. That shy kid from Philadelphia, who transformed himself into a defensive genius, found himself right back where he started working on the docks, struggling to make ends meet. Young's post-boxing life unfolded as a cautionary tale about the sport's darkest consequences. Legal troubles mounted as he battled drug addiction, a struggle that eventually landed him in court on possession charges. During one particularly revealing hearing, Young's lawyer painted a devastating picture of his client's condition, arguing that the former contender exhibited clear symptoms of chronic traumatic brain injury, the inevitable result of absorbing punishment in the ring. For nearly 20 years, medical reports confirmed what many feared Young was suffering from: dementia, pugilistica, what we commonly call being punch-drunk. The man whose strategic brilliance once neutralized the most fearsome punchers now struggled with basic cognitive functions, his neural pathways damaged by the accumulated trauma of countless blows. At boxing celebrity events, Young required constant assistance from family members just to navigate crowded rooms. The decline was painfully visible. The once graceful boxer who danced around George Foreman now moved with uncertainty. His speech sometimes slurred, his once sharp mind increasingly clouded. The contrast between Young's fate and Muhammad Ali's couldn't have been more stark. While Ali remained boxing royalty, wealthy, celebrated, and beloved worldwide, despite his own health struggles, Young vanished. The man who many believed actually defeated. The greatest found himself fighting for dignity. What makes Young's story particularly heartbreaking is the psychological burden of having come so tantalizingly close to glory. Imagine carrying that knowledge through life's hardships, that you outboxed Muhammad Ali, that you neutralized George Foreman, that you were perhaps one controversial decision away from being heavyweight champion of the world. On top of that, his deteriorating health was fatal. After a 6-day hospitalization in Philadelphia in February 2005, his heart finally gave out. He was just 56 years old when he died. The 6 days Jimmy Young spent in that Philadelphia hospital room might as well be a metaphor for his entire career fighting valiantly while the world paid little attention. When his heart finally surrendered, there were no grand tributes, no worldwide memorials that typically accompany the passing of boxing royalty. Just quiet grief from those who truly knew the man behind the gloves. In death as in life, Jimmy Young remained in boxing shadows. His record: 35 wins, 18 losses, and 3 draws with just 11 knockouts tells only a fraction of his story. These numbers mask the man who made Muhammad Ali look ordinary, who neutralized devastating punchers, and who repeatedly fell victim to controversial decisions. His legacy exists in the space between what happened and what the record books show. Boxing's memory plays favorites, doesn't it? We remember the showmen, the knockout artists, the champions with long reigns. Young was something altogether different, a defensive virtuoso, a tactical genius, a problem solver in boxing shorts. He embodied a form of greatness that true boxing aficionados appreciate, but rarely gets celebrated with the same fervor as spectacular knockouts. Would you believe that when he died, major sports networks barely noticed? The same man who outboxed Ali, neutralized Foreman, and deserved the decision against Norton, slipped away like a shadow at the sunset, leaving barely a ripple in the sports media. He had already faded from public memory long before his heart stopped beating. At his funeral, you would have heard the truth about the man. His wife, Barbara's simple words revealed what mattered. He was well loved by his family. He was a good man who'll be missed by many. Behind the technical wizard who frustrated champions lived a father to 5, grandfather to 9, a family man whose true legacy extended far beyond the squared circle. Ever wonder how boxing history might look if Young had gotten the nod against Ali that April night? Championship glory might have followed along with recognition opportunities and financial security that could have changed his later years. But his greatest contribution to boxing wasn't defined by what could have been. It was those moments when he proved the seemingly invincible were merely human. After all, what creates a lasting boxing legacy? Young never claimed the fame or fortune of his celebrated contemporaries, but for brief, brilliant moments he was boxing's hidden masterpiece, a canvas of technical perfection that few truly appreciated in his time, like a star that burns brightest when viewed through the right telescope. Young's brilliance required the proper lens to fully appreciate. That's why boxing historians still champion Young's rightful place in the pantheon. They recognize that true impact isn't always measured in belts or knockout percentages, but in the problems posed, the solutions found, and the artistry displayed even when the spotlight shines elsewhere. In Young's hands, boxing wasn't just fighting. It was chess. It was dance. It was art that still teaches us to look beyond the obvious for true greatness. Beyond the statistics and scorecards, Jimmy Young's legacy endures in the memories of those who truly understand the sweet science. As one historian poignantly noted, Young should be remembered as the fighter who showed the boxing world all the boxing basics Ali never learned as a fighter. Despite his post-ring struggles, Young remains celebrated by boxing historians as a master technician who exposed flaws in the greatest champions of his era. Sometimes it's not championships that makes legends, but the ability to transform our understanding of what's possible. Young made the invincible look vulnerable. His skill revealed another dimension of the sport, proving that true greatness isn't always crowned with gold. How can we let such genius fade into obscurity? Jimmy Young wasn't just a fighter. He was boxing's forgotten revolutionary, a man whose elegant defiance in the ring deserves to be remembered. What do you think? Did Jimmy deserve more than what he was handed? Which side of history are you on? We'd love to hear what you think, so please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button so we can continue to make videos like these. See you in the next one.